Dave Smith and Coleman Hughes had a discussion earlier, or sort of a debate earlier this or last week. I think it was October 4th when it was published. Coleman Hughes works for the Free Press, generally pro-Israel outlet, and I would say generally pretty good outlet on most things, not just Israel. The discussion itself was 3.5 hours. We are not going to cover the whole thing. We have, I think I have about 7 clips or so throughout the discussion, sort of covering some of the major points that Dave Smith, not just on this discussion, but oftentimes tries to make, and in many cases are very telling. We won't have almost any responses from Coleman, who, I mean, I'll go to you guys. What did you guys think? But generally, I think had a pretty good way of going about things. Although when it comes to Dave Smith, I think debunking what he says oftentimes is the wrong thing to go about it, since most of his worldview is just so out there from the get-go. Something to just mention that just happened today. Apparently, Dave Smith is doing a discussion with Nick Fuentes, of all people. This is happening today, so I do not mean to poison the well before we go into our discussion about Dave Smith. But and we haven't seen the discussion, so maybe Dave Smith will be very challenging of Nick Fuentes. But I think, especially when it comes to foreign policy, somebody like Dave Smith oftentimes gets in agreement with. I mean, in this debate itself, he mentions a lot John Mersheimer. He gets. Libertarians oftentimes get very friendly with communists or outright neo-Nazis when it comes to foreign policy. So I don't think it's that surprising. Welcome to the reality show. Joining me today are Stuart Margolis and E.R. Reichel. Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. And we'll go into clips in a bit, but before that, I'll just go to some opening thoughts. E.R., what did you think of this discussion/debate?
Well, let me put it this way. So just more general about our comedian friend. So what the comedian does, well, he has this sort of moral crime and epistemological crime, and they both are happening together. And the epistemological crime is the crime of rationalization. Now, before going to rationalization, I'll talk about objective thought process. So when you want to find out the truth and to look at reality objectively, you look at the facts, you use logic, you search for evidence, and then you reach for an objective conclusion. And there are many. It's not an easy process. There is a lot of ways to fail in the way, and you have to do it properly. Now, the crime of rationalization is when you start with a conclusion, whatever your motivation is, whether it is some sort of a moral premise, whether it is something that makes you feel a certain way, a fear, hatred, you want to reach a certain conclusion. So you abuse logic in order to reach that conclusion. So you can cherry pick the facts, and you can ignore the context, and you can take non-essential things and address them as if they are essential. And you build layers upon layers of self-deceit in order to reach the conclusion, and then you advocate for that conclusion while committing this epistemological crime. And the moral angle of it is you surrendering to motivation that is not an objective motivation. It's some sort of emotional or something in that realm. So this is my point. Obviously, throughout our show tonight, we'll obviously get to the examples themselves, but this is how I frame.
Stuart, any opening thoughts?
I certainly agree with ER that that's what Dave Smith is doing. I would say I was familiar with both of these people a little bit, but not in depth. And I was actually pleasantly surprised, in fact, by both of them. Although Dave Smith is guilty of these crimes, so are almost everybody in the public intellectual sphere these days. And most of them, I think, are much more egregious and less able to, I mean, at least I was pleasantly surprised that these people were able to have a 3-hour or 3.5 hour long discussion and actually let the other person express their point. So often these things, people are shouting over each other. The emotionalism is so over the top that it's hard to even watch. This at least stayed polite, stayed intellectual. I appreciated that from both of the parties.
Yeah, it did indeed stay polite, although it had that weird sort of, you could see Dave Smith really getting annoyed at many times, and I'm not sure if that was because, in a sense, Coleman, I think, had at least had a good debunks to what he was saying. But let's listen to the first clip and then we can comment more.
The experiment of Europeans trying to create a Jewish space on a Jewish state on land where Arabs lived, like that is what they did. There might have been reasons for that, but that's what ended up happening. The result of that was 750 Arabs being expelled from where they lived and not allowed back in. There for the period between 1948 and 1967, they're living as refugees in different places. Then from 1967 all the way up till today, they're militarily occupied by a foreign power, and now it's culminating in what scholars will debate whether it's a genocide or not, okay? Or whatever the hell you want to call this. I don't want to get caught up in semantics here. All of that happened too. And then after all of that, you sit here, Coleman, and you go, why are they attacking Israel and not Egypt? It's like, because there's like a long history here, man. And they're really pissed off about this.
Hold on.
So Dave Smith started talking about this because Coleman, I think, brought up the Egyptian blockade on Gaza that has been in place. And he asked him, like, why don't you focus on Egypt? Dave Smith tries to say that, yeah, maybe, and I think he kind of acknowledges it, that Egypt is also a problem, but that Israel is this biggest problem. And I'll just point out, ER brought up rationalization sooner, and this is exactly what it is, right? He just goes through the history, a bunch of Europeans came in and had some experiment, which resulted in 750, I think he meant to say 750,000 Arabs being expelled and then becoming refugees. And then after 67, there was the occupation until now. Nothing else, no dates about, okay, what happened in 67? What happened? Why did so many people get expelled? Like, what were those events that led to this place? It's just de facto, or sort of like, this is just what happened, and this is how we're here, and that's it. That's all that you get. ER, any thoughts on this one?
Well, I think Coleman, on the one hand, he does a good job breaking down some of those epistemological failures of the cherry picking, questioning the Jordanian occupation and the Egyptian occupation and other things. But I think for me, the main problem with this discussion is that it's like a battle on the non-essentials. And the essential thing here is the moral premise that leads our comedian friend, the motive for all of his logical juggling, which is basically altruism. Weak is moral, strong is evil. The Palestinians are so weak and poor, so it must be the advanced Israelis who's making them this way, completely ignoring the agency of people over themselves, completely ignoring the power of ideas, completely ignoring the evil of the ideas of the Palestinians, seeing the Palestinians as an ethnic group rather than an ideological political movement aimed as to kill all the Jews and use the Western altruism and love for the weak as a weapon. While this is not really addressed, the whole thing is about, Ariel Sharon said this, Bibi said that, yeah, but Bibi wasn't prime minister then, and then this letter was said, but this letter wasn't really read. for me it's like, it's when you buy a rotten a fruit that's completely rotten on the inside, and you just examine how good the texture, the fine texture are on the outside, without examining the core of the issue.
Yeah, two things to point out. This was oftentimes my biggest problem. And yesterday we had Razi and Raka had a long discussion about this. And one thing they brought up, or I think Razi brought up, is sort of like discussion with pro-Palestinians or his engagement with pro-Palestinians. And yeah, there is a certain amount of point. Like, let's say if you're in America and you want to discuss healthcare, and you have somebody who wants more government involvement and somebody who wants less government involvement. There is like a discussion you can have there if both people have some grounding of like they want better results, right? They want better healthcare outcomes, and there is a discussion you could have there. But when it comes to people who are on the pro-Palestinian side, I'm having a real trouble of like finding a common ground. Like at what point, like what fundamental do we even agree on that in not even after October 7th, but in the whole history of Israeli Arab conflict, you somehow end up on the Palestinian side. Like I cannot even connect with you on any ground. I oftentimes feel like. And second, to bring up the Dave Smith strategy is that, and I'm not sure who pointed out first, but this like living in quotes, like, oh, here I have a quote from Ben Gurion. It's like, okay, this guy, I don't know how long Ben Gurion lived, but take anybody, any historical figure, somebody who lived for 60, 70, 80 years. Here is one quote from him that will tell you everything you need to know about Zionism, the foundation of Israel, and the future of Israel. I cannot take anybody like that seriously. Stuart, any thoughts from you?
I just throughout that clip, but also really the whole interview, the elephant in the room that Dave just refuses to acknowledge is the hatred of the Jews that is the insurmountable obstacle here. Israel may have done this wrong, Egypt did that, whatever. All of that is not the issue. That is not the fundamental. And I think Coleman tries to get at that at a few different points. That you can't have peace if one of the parties thinks the other party needs to be eradicated. That's just, there's no basis for peace. There's no basis for discussion. And that's what all of these pro-Palestinian people blank out on. That they've created in their mind this semi-rational Palestinian person that, there may be some of them out there, but they're not the ones in control of the region, not even close. So how do you create peace? How do you create a solution when there is this divide that is unbridgeable?
Yeah, and actually in the next clip, he kind of touches on that, so that would be perfect. But before that, we have a super chat from John. Thank you so much. He says, the Arabs were, quote, expelled because they lost the war that they started. If the Israelis had lost, they would have been massacred and expelled. Sheesh. I mean, there is this...
But by the way,
yeah, sure.
I want to add on that it's unclear if they were expelled by Israelis. There is a common, how do I say it, like a theory or an assumption that they basically got instruction from the Arab leaders to leave the battlefield and then come back when Israel is occupied. And another claim that they were fearing that the Jews will do to them what they were planning to do to the Jews, so they ran away.
Yeah, and even if that weren't true, I mean, something I've said about, I think I only said it once so far. When it comes to the, let's say, Ukrainian-Russian conflict, if Ukraine manages to take back Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk, there, I think on some level, there would have to be expulsions, similar that happened to the Germans and Japanese after World War II. If you have a population that basically joins the enemy side, decides to like fundamentally support the enemy side, on some level, you cannot then hope to coexist with those people that have decided to do so. Now, Israel haven't expelled like all the Arabs. Many of them, I mean, still it has millions of Arabs that are the citizens of Israel.
Also, by the way, there were Arabs that sided with the Israelis in the war, and they were kept safe. It's not like in the Israeli perspective, it's not like a racial thing or like, you know, we gotta expel the Arabs. It's like we have enemies that are fighting us. We're trying to form alliances. We're trying to protect ourselves. And for example, the Arab population of Abu Ghosh sided with, some of them at least sided with Israel, and they are Israeli citizens today. I want to add one more thing. Sure. There is a fixation in many people in the West have a weird fixation for Israel, and I'm convinced this is a part of the rationalization process. You dig so deep and learn so much about Israel with the like aim, the target to vilify them. So I was speaking with a German once, and he was telling me, yeah, the foreign minister 3 years ago was this and that, and he said ABC, and I was like, do you know who's your own foreign minister? And he has no idea. Like, he knows the Israeli foreign minister 3 years ago and who's the foreign minister right now, but he doesn't know the foreign minister of his own country. Doesn't know who he is, because the fixation on trying to cherry pick and find like the criminating Israel is like an obsession in many people.
Stuart, anything to add before we go to the next clip?
He's absolutely right. It is kind of mystifying, unless there is still, which of course there is, lingering anti-Semitism in the world. I mean, that, otherwise, why is the world so obsessed with Israel?
Let's look at the next clip.
Israel returned to 67 borders, and they allowed a government to be created in the West Bank, and that government attacked Israel. We're having a new conversation there, and that would be a conversation where Israel might be able to win over support around the world again, because they could go, look, we took our boot off the neck, and look, we got proven right, or something like that. So I wouldn't advise Israel to put their guns down. I wouldn't advise Israel to open their borders, but yeah, they could end this occupation. That's their choice.
So I view this as the other side of the coin of the people, even under our videos, when they talk about the, let's say, the current deal of that is between Israel and Hamas. They say, well, no, this deal is good because if Hamas rejects it or breaks it, then Israel can go in. And this is the same kind of rhetoric, right? It's if Israel, so-called, ends the occupation, pulls out of Gaza and, as he says, West Bank, which, by the way, pulling out of West Bank means 500,000 of Jews are losing their home, their livelihood, everything they have, because that's how many people, that's how many Jews live in Judea and Samaria. That if that happens, if the Palestinian state then attacks Israel, then Israel will have like a free hand to actually do what is necessary. And I don't believe Dave Smith. I don't believe Dave Smith, if the Palestinian state is established and it attacks Israel, that Dave Smith will be like, okay, Israel should go in, occupy all of it, annex it, put the population under military occupation for a few decades until they can become citizens. He absolutely wouldn't believe in that. It's the same kind of cope that I see everywhere. So it's a pretense. ER?
Well, I want to address something else. It is very interesting, but there is some little nuance that I find very interesting. He described the withdrawal of Gaza like Israel saying, oh yeah, we took the boot off their neck. Israel's boot was never on the neck of the innocent Palestinians. Yes, Israel have placed a boot on the neck of terrorists. And yes, when somebody shoots at us, we shoot back. And when somebody murders an Israeli child, we go after him. But the Palestinians under Israeli rule have had the best, safest time of their history under Israeli rule. And it's crazy. It's like the idea, the false racist idea of the the primary status of self-determination of an ethnic group. Like for those people, for Dave Smith, it's okay that Syrians are oppressed in Syria, that Lebanese are oppressed in Lebanon, that Iraqis are oppressed in Iraq, because this is what the race have decided. So he doesn't give a damn about true human rights. He only cares about relationship between races and ethnic group. And when race A rules race B, it doesn't matter. They can give them rights, they can give them freedom, allow them to trade, allow them to own land, protect their life against crime and violence. He will define it as a boot on their neck, because God forbid the general who controls the territory is a Jew. But when Hamas tortures its own people, it's Gaza, it's okay. When the Palestinian Authority tortures its own people in Judea and Samaria territories that Israel gave them, it's okay. When people are being lynched on the street in Ramallah because the mob suspect them of cooperating with Israel, nobody in that mob is being tried by the Palestinian authorities, because it's legit to have lynches on the street under Palestinian rule. When Palestinians have autonomy, when they rule themselves, this is when they have a true boot on their neck, including the neck of the innocents. This is when they get the boot. When Israel has allowed them to take control over themselves, this is what they do. But it's okay. For our comedian, this is a proper self-determination of nation. It's okay for people to collectively self-determine themselves by canceling the concept of self, by sacrificing each one who has a self for the nature of whatever common mystical good they see under the Islamic tyrannical system. It's okay to sacrifice any Palestinian in order to kill all the Jews. This is a proper self-determination for our comedian friend. But when Jews defend themselves, and by defending themselves, they happen to take territory, which they often give up because the Jews themselves also fall to this false premise and say, oh, we don't want to rule other nations. Once they forced to hold this land, the nature of what they're doing there is securing the people's right and security against violence, against terrorists, against Palestinians trying to kill other Palestinians. There are many Palestinians in Israeli jail they are in prison for murdering other Palestinians because they suspected them of cooperating with Israel. There is nobody in any Arab nation who is in prison for committing a crime against somebody that is because he suspected him of supporting Israel. And there are many cases. And it's the same. And it's the same with other things. Like I talked about in previous show about a Bedouin woman that when she was a child, she ran away from her abusive Bedouin family. And the only reason she wasn't murdered at the spot was due to Israeli police and courts defending her. And this is what the Arab society is afraid of. It is afraid of the rule of law that doesn't allow tribal violence. And the only place that does it is Israel. So when Israel protects women from their abusive husbands or fathers or brothers, for the Palestinians and the pro-Palestinians, this is oppression. This is a boot on the neck. They've completely neglected and forgot about individual rights, about one's right for his own life. They don't give a rat's ass about that. All they care is about a collective right of a race to kill their own people by themselves.
Yeah, and we have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. When this is what always surprises me about well, doesn't surprise me at this point because I know enough philosophy, but when it comes to libertarians who are supposedly pro-individual rights, who are supposedly pro-capitalism, how oftentimes you find them like actually supporting or being on the side of dictatorship. Now, Dave Smith would, of course, come out and say, no, I do not agree with Hamas. I do not want Hamas to be in power. But when it comes to any actual policy they support, and this is, I think, what matters oftentimes much more. I mean, it matters what is your actual philosophy, but also it matters what does it look like in the real world. And with libertarians, it oftentimes in the real world, it looks like they're basically, they are the ones who are supporting dictatorships and are supporting terrorist organization. I mean, I always, when during the last election, whenever somebody says, I wish neither Kamala Harris or Donald Trump would win, or something along that line. I wish neither side would win. And I always say, I hope one of those sides will win, because libertarian and green candidates are so much anti-American that even Kamala Harris and Donald Trump oftentimes pale in comparison. And you could see it clearly on the issue of Israel, on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, oftentimes the most. Stuart, what do you make of this libertarian, oftentimes like weird, basically support of terrorism, or let's say the terrorist states?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've seen over the last 50 years that libertarian is such a broad concept that it really encompasses everything and anything. It's kind of meaningless. But yeah, I mean, I think the moral, I mean, libertarians are such a small part of the world. I think more alarming is the fact that Dave Smith's attitude is probably the majority attitude. People today think of, you know, self-determination as, you know, a collective concept instead of an individual concept. That, you know, nobody is looking at individual rights in Palestine. It's all, you know, oh well, the Palestinian people have rights as a people. And as AR pointed out, a lot of times that right is the right of, you know, a father to carry out an honor killing for, you know, or you know, I mean, it's nothing that we would recognize as rights. The other point I wanted to make on that last clip, I mean, I obviously am not as knowledgeable about what this Gaza 2005 was set up as, but my understanding is they have not been occupied up until they invaded on October 7th. Between 2005, they were left on their own. They were not a sovereign state, but they were not occupied by Israel. So Dave Smith's thing, oh, you know, well, if they just didn't have the boot on their neck and then they did something terrible, then the world would, well, isn't that the situation that we just had? They literally had self-government since 2005, and October 7th is what they chose to do with that self-government. And yet the world, you know, there was initial horror. You know, it lasted about a day, and then the excuses started.
Yeah, I think the example they would usually bring up is the embargo. It's Israel is still occupying Gaza because it has not embargo. What am I saying? But you're muted. Yeah.
Blockade.
Blockade, yeah. And even that is not technically the right term, because stuff is allowed to go, or was allowed to go in before October 7th. It just had to go through checkpoints. It had to be controlled to make sure basically terrorist weapons are not going in, which it still did. Yeah, did you want to jump in, or?
I have a point on this, like an anecdote. So basically, 2005, Israel leaves Gaza, and by the way, there is an airport in Gaza. It was a part of a part of the Oslo Accords, and it was closed, I think, even before Israel withdrawal, because of all the terror that was in Gaza even before 2005. Just an anecdote. Anyway, you know what? I'll make it a little longer than I thought. I'll give you the whole background. So 67, Israel takes it from Egypt. It was I think it was a puppet state. Like Egypt ruled it, but it was like supposedly like a Palestinian state, but not really. And then Israel took it in 67. It was quite peaceful and quiet until the 1980s. In 1980, Israel signs a peace agreement with Egypt, withdraws out of Sinai, brings it back. And I think this is when the Palestinian cause really rose, because Palestinians learned a very valuable lesson for them from Israel withdrawal out of Sinai, which is a huge amount of territory, which is basically, if you terrorize them, they will try to please you, and they will withdraw eventually. So this is when the first Intifada began in 1982. Israel really tried to reduce collateral damage as much as possible. The Palestinians already in the 80s abused it. Eventually, it ended. Israel managed to take control over the Intifada, kept ruling Gaza as an occupied territory while securing the individual rights of the Gazans. And there was a lot of Gazans entering Israel, trading, working with Israel. It was quite similar to Judea and Samaria as it is today. Then in 1993, the Oslo Accords, Israel left parts of Gaza. In 1993, they gave Gaza City to the Palestinian Authority. And this is when the terror really rised up. The Palestinian Authority back in the 90s turned Gaza into a terror paradise. And in the year 2000, there was the second Intifada, and it was even harder and stricter. And in 2003, it's also another interesting story. In 2003, there was Operation like defensive wall or something like, I don't know the name in English, Chomat Magen in Hebrew. And Israel went into Judea and Samaria and reinstalled military control over Judea and Samaria, including the parts they gave to the Palestinian Authority. So we have like security control over there. And this is why there is less terror from Judea and Samaria. Israel was about to enter Gaza in 1993 and to resecure the areas given to the Palestinian Authority. And then a friend of the Palestinians came to their help, and this friend is Hezbollah. In 2003, Hezbollah did provocation on Israel's northern border, and the whole battalion that was supposed to enter Gaza actually went up north to set up power to defend Israel from an attack from the north. And I say this is the reason why we didn't take back military control over Gaza in 1993. And this is very crucial, because in the early 2000s, there was the second Intifada, more terror, more Palestinians murdering Israelis. And this led to Israel making the decision to withdraw Gaza instead of what they did in Judea and Samaria, which is reinstall military control. So we have the experience we had terror striking in Judea and Samaria, we had terror going up in Gaza. In Judea and Samaria, we choose the military response. We killed the terrorists, took over the cells, retained military control, and now Judea and Samaria is relatively peaceful, especially in comparison to Gaza. There's still a huge problem there. The Palestinian Authority still exists. There are still terror cells, and it's a big mess, but it's way different than 1,300 Israelis being murdered in one day, what we got from Gaza. So here is the experience. If you withdraw and give Palestinians to rule themselves, they do it by their own ideology, which is devoting their life and efforts and everything to destroy Israel. But if you maintain control, at least you can protect yourself. Now, my point was that we left in 2005 completely. In 2010, there was a flotilla from Turkey to Gaza. They came in, Israeli Navy took over the flotilla, and they were expecting them to be unarmed, but they were armed with sticks and rods and metal instruments. And they attacked soldiers armed with rubber bullets, and they had to use their emergency pistol, where they weren't even thought of this scenario. And Israel has filed an apology to Turkey for Turkey sending a ship with people armed with sticks and metal rods to beat up soldiers. We had to apologize because of pressure from Obama. And since this whole fiasco, we have agreed to let concrete enter Gaza so they can rebuild, quote unquote, and they use this concrete to build terror channels.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good sort of recent history. I do want to cover a bit more clips, so we'll skip to that in a bit. We have a super chat from Gail. Thank you so much. Super chat from Tom. Thank you so much. He says, the outrage against billionaires doesn't seem to extend to Hamas, Xi, Putin at all. They oppose capitalism, and all else is window dressing, best premises. Yeah, it's never about, because like the number billion only kind of makes sense in the US. Like it's not the amount of money. It's simply convenient way to blame a certain group of people. But absolutely, it's not about how much money they have. That's why there isn't the same focus on Hamas or Putin or even the Saudi family or whoever you want to take. It's an argument against capitalism. That's the one thing. That's why they are not going after Putin. They are not going after Hamas because they know this is not the result of capitalism. So this is not their enemy. We also have a super chat from Gene. Thank you so much. He says, quote, the comedian thinks it's okay for people to collectively self-determine themselves by canceling the concept self, end quote. And he says, bravo, ER. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
as I said, let's watch another clip from Dave Smith.
I've never been one of these conspiracy kooks. I'm not claiming Israel controls everything that ever happens.
Well, you think it was a key variable, though. You think it was a key variable.
Yes, I think Israel has a lot of influence on this country, and they obviously do. I mean, like, I don't even know how this is debatable. And anyway, that being said, like, yeah, you're right. What all of the sum total of what Israel has gotten out of the United States of America is like undying loyal support, hundreds of billions of dollars, backing them in war, protecting them, bribing off their neighbors to help them. But yeah, they didn't get every single little thing that they ever wanted.
So I think this came out because I think Coleman said or brought up a point about, well, if Israel controls or something with America, why did the Golan Heights recognition didn't come until basically what, like 50 years after the occupation started, when Trump recognized the Golan Heights? And Dave Smith responds with that basically just because they didn't get every single thing doesn't mean there isn't control. But he starts with saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And this is something I don't really understand when people say like Israel has a lot of influence over America. Like, what are you exactly saying? Are you saying that there are people in America who do want America to have this sort of like special relationship with Israel, as many Americans have seemed to do for a long time? Maybe it's changing, unfortunately, now. Or is he saying, because especially with Dave Smith, he has that kind of anti-democratic, anti-representative, anti like elite leadership thing, that basically he says the government doesn't do what its people wants. I think that is sort of his thing. But the fact is, no, the American government, when it comes to Israel, is doing mostly exactly what its people want. That's why in the last 2 years now, it's Israel, America has absolutely been doing something that is wrong for Israel. It has been restraining Israel for a long time, even with Trump, that is supposed to be this pro-Israeli guy. Israel has been continuously more and more restricted. Now you have the ceasefire deal. So, I mean, Stuart, what? On some level, it feels like he tries to like have his own cake and eat it too by saying like, "Oh, I'm not saying it's like they're like controlling them, but they have influence over them." It kind of reminds me of Candace Owens of like, "Oh, there's the Jewish lobby has influence over Charlie Kirk, and he was changing his mind later."
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think he wants to kind of spread the conspiracy theory without being a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, influence. All kinds of people have influence in the government. His implication is that it's somehow undue influence or it's nefarious influence. But he without ever having specifics, it's just this amorphous, influence that he can bring up. Yeah, it's a little dishonest, I think.
Yeah, because if I were to bring up like actual examples from the real world, my I don't have a girlfriend right now, but when I had a girlfriend, oh, she had influence over me because I wanted to like spend time with her. Like, what do you mean? Like, the Israeli lobby has influence over America, so then America does what it wanted to do anyway. And he brings up examples of the Iraq war or Iran strike or whatever. Pick any American war that supposedly like Israel benefited from it. Like, are you making the case that America didn't want to do it, and the only reason they did it is because of Israel? Because he sort of wants to like push it there, but never like actually commits to it. Yeah.
The example with the Iraq war is very interesting because the Coleman says, wait, Israel didn't want the United States to attack Iran. They said, to attack Iraq. They said, listen, if you want to go to an adventure in the Middle East, you should focus on Iran. And then he says, yeah, but he says, but Bibi went to the Congress and says that it's good that they're going to Iraq. And then he was like, Coleman answered, well, he wasn't prime minister then. He wasn't like, he just went out of Israeli politics. It was after the decision was made. While they were making the decision, they were advised by Israel to go after Iran. So it's just like Bibi, telling the Americans he supported them after the decision was done. So like, what the hell do you want? And what our comedian ignores, he ignores the most essential and influencing lobby, quote unquote, in favor of America invading Iraq. And this lobby is called Al-Qaeda. And they've made some real estate changes in the United States of America that led to America want to invade the Middle East. And those real estate changes, of course, is the horrible terror attack of 9/11. So this is the reason for America's adventure in the Middle East, which I think was done very poorly and was done without acknowledging Islam as a political movement against the West, which is based on a religion, but that's not essential here. It's an organized movement to force a political system over the whole world, which is against the nature of man and against the free world and against capitalism. And nobody can admit that in the political level, and that's horrible. And they're not addressing that. They're saying, oh, well, is Israel behind the scene making America do things against it? It's like, what influence does Israel have in this regard? The best influence Israel has against the West is stopping the crazy Islamic world from focusing on the West. We took off the nuclear reactor in Syria. We destroyed the nuclear reactor in Iraq. We are the one fighting against Iran. And all we get from the world 99% of the time is condemnation for us doing the dirty job they don't want to do in order to save their life from those crazy tyrannies, aiming their ballistic missiles towards the West and sending terrorists to destroy the West from within. And all Israel is being in scrutiny and being condemned for doing the thing that the West should have done decades ago.
Yeah, and I want to build upon that a bit more, but actually in the next clip, Dave Smith himself takes it a bit further. So let's watch this first.
Having a military presence as we do in Germany or in South Korea or in Japan or something like that, where you have, these are democracies. These are Western countries that again, I'm not like defending modern nation states or democracy or anything like that, but there is at least somewhat of a free market, somewhat of a democratic situation. The people like participate to some degree in their government. I don't exactly believe that, but at least that's the way the thing is sold. What you're talking about in Saudi Arabia was using military bases. The purpose of the military bases there was for the bombing and blockade campaign against Iraq. And bin Laden, in that letter that you're talking about, laid this out very clearly.
So I just want to people understand the way he talks about Western liberal nations and the way he talks about Hamas or Palestinians or any Middle Eastern states. He says like, oh yeah, the Western states are the democracy, or so the Germans would have us believe. It's like the most like outward, like he just doesn't want to touch it. Yeah, they would have us believe that it's like a democratic state. I do not support like Western nations. I do not support the modern liberal state. I mean, what kind of person are you? Like, we have a problem with America, UK, European Union, Germany, like every state. I could find a problem, but like having a problem with the regime itself, like the fact that it's
Daniel,
yeah.
I'd like to touch on that.
Yeah, go.
When he addresses basically the implicit claim that the Western world is not by essence tyrannical, like, Germany and France and Britain and the United States of America and Israel, these are not tyrannical regimes, suddenly he's a skepticist. He cannot tell, he cannot know. But when it is about the Palestinians being angels whom are oppressed, this is when he is certain. This is when he knows. Because it's all, once again, it's all this dirty process of rationalization to reach to his pre-desired conclusion. So whenever there is like counter evidence, claims that he doesn't like, oh, he's skeptic, he cannot really know. But whenever this is the conclusion he wants to reach, he just knows it. He is certain, he has clarity, he is capable of knowing suddenly the fact that he's a comedian doesn't really matters. Suddenly he's able to know and be confident and stand like firm on his premise that the Palestinians are good and the Israelis are evil. This is very certain for him. And I find it this is revolting. This is disgusting.
Yeah, this is what I hate about many of the populists, and I do think that Dave Smith is a populist. It's they always have like criticism of authority, criticism of the status quo, criticism of administrations, but they never like actually have solutions. Like, okay, you might have a problem with Western states, but what are you offering in solution? And oftentimes it's something absolutely like ridiculous. Like, or you have a problem with the way, and I think the status quo in Israeli-Palestinian conflict is problematic. It shouldn't be like it is. But his solution, which I think he brought up a two-state solution. I don't know which solution is he like 100% in favor or what he finds the most interesting. But like, let's say the Palestinian state is established and it is like every other Arab state in the region. Will he then like focus the same amount of time on its criticism? Stuart, I mean, I never know what to like make of this weird like hate for Western nations, almost like qua Western nations, like in their actual nature.
Yeah, again, I think it's him wanting to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to be able to criticize the Western nations and sort of have these sly little comments about, well, they claim to represent people, but I don't know about that. And but as you said, he's not offering an alternative. It's like, okay, so clearly he doesn't think the Saudis are a good alternative. So what is the alternative? What should we have? And I don't know that he has any answer.
I mean,
if he does, it didn't come out here.
I think for him, and even that's a problem because like even he wears the libertarian label as sort of a fashion trend almost, especially when you consider that I think in the last election he did support Donald Trump. So again, like what do you even make of the or he might have supported the libertarian candidate. I'm not actually sure, but that wouldn't be that much better. Somebody in the chat says Dave 4-star General Smith, which maybe we should mention because I did not get a clip of it since I couldn't find like a good concise way of it, but maybe we can mention it. He oftentimes brings up the example of I don't remember the name of the 4-star general, but some 4-star general in America, and it's always interesting how suddenly he is for authority. Suddenly he can quote authority, qua authority. But he brings up example that basically America had like a plan to invade a bunch of Middle Eastern nations in like 5 years or something. And he said, oh, this was planned all along. I'll just a quick think on that I think like a basic debunk would be simply that just because there is a plan for something doesn't mean that that is like something that's going to happen. You might be surprised to know America actually had plans to invade Canada during World War II. Like there is an actual document, there is an actual plan for invasion of Canada, because it was just one of the things like we hope to never have to do something like that. But if it's a scary situation to be in, and also for invasion of Mexico and a few other places, it's like, no, you usually have like plans. And when we talk about plans to invade certain countries, it's like, how are the troop movements going to be? Where do we have specific military sites that we can quickly pull off and conduct this operation? It's, I mean, that should be basic, but I think it sort of, again, brings up the example of the populist nature of the arguments. It's, you can simply this like common sense, right? You can simply point to certain things and people should understand what it means without any expertise, without understanding what is actually going on. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, or should we
This
go to the
is
next? Yep.
this is what militaries do, and this is a part of their bureaucratic nature. Bureaucrats make drawer plans. Bureaucrats know that when you're a bureaucrat, it takes you years or decades to get shit done. So you make a drawer plan. You plan whatever possible scenario ever. So when the political leader says, "Oh, I want to do that," you have a plan ready for them. This is what bureaucrats do. And the military is basically, I don't know, like every military in the world is like 50% bureaucrats at least. This is what they do. And I think this is great that America has drawer plans to invade tyrannical regimes that risk the United States of America security. They can send missiles, they can attack their allies, they can do whatever. They should have the drawer plans to invade them and to take over those regimes or do whatever. And it doesn't mean that the political leadership of the United States has an intention to do that. And once again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. Even if the politicians wanted to invade those countries, it's not a it's like this is like this poor claim. Oh, they're like imperialist and they want to take over the world and they want to put their boots on everyone's neck. Like, once again, this is like tyrannical regimes we are talking about. The best thing that could happen to such tyrannical regime is to be invaded by the United States and to have like a proper constitution installed. Not that I'm saying that it's ever going to happen, because the Americans themselves doesn't want to do it, and they're using the concept of naive democracy that they did in Iraq and in Gaza, that letting the barbarians choose a tyrannical government instead of doing the concept of World War II, which is installing a proper free constitution and re-educating those tyrannical cultures. But like the sheer essence of morally criticizing such plans is ridiculous, whether it's true or false.
We have a super chat from Askishka. Thank you so much. He says, "I am livid. Qatar just gave 10 billion to UNRWA. That is not helpful." And he super chatted again. Thank you so much. He says, "Qatar is still funding Hamas. Just gave 10 billion to UNRWA. Infuriating." So thank you for both of those. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, Qatar is not the ally of the Western states, as much as we try to act. Not only try to act. Technically, Qatar is actually ally of America. It's a major non-NATO ally. America has bases in Qatar, as it does in Saudi Arabia and many other Arab states. Unfortunately, because again, allying with dictatorships. I mean, it would be one thing if America actually did fight Iran to temporarily ally with dictatorships, although I think it always is a problem. I think if you go to history, Soviet Union or pretty much any other dictatorship, oftentimes it resulted in not actually better future. I think you can only find a few examples where allying with dictatorships actually brought up a bit of a better future. But yeah, absolutely, it's terrible that we ally ourselves with dictatorships. I mean, Stuart, any comments on maybe specifically Qatar?
Just that, yeah, I agree with you entirely. I mean, except in very specific wartime situations, I don't think we should be allied with dictatorships. And as you said, even then, I think most of the time it turns out to be a mistake.
Yeah.
I think the United States should work towards how do you say it, like downgrading the relationship with Qatar. They should take off their military assets from there. I don't know where, move them somewhere else in the region that you trust, and stop having friendship with Qatar. I think Qatar should eventually be defined as an enemy of the West, and I think Qatar is one of the most dangerous and states in the world, because they are doing effective and successful intellectual war against the West using Al Jazeera and funding terror and controlling Hamas and just so many innocent people died because of essentially things Qatar did, and this is people people. I personally grieve for people died essentially because of processes started by Qatar. So I think it's horrible that the United States has a military base there, that they have this alliance with Qatar. I think this is one of the most dangerous things currently happening.
We have another super chat from Azgieshka. Thank you so much. He says, the hair on the back of my neck stands up every time I hear self-determination. With Gaza West Bank, they are self-determined to murder us. Insane. I mean, yeah, especially with somebody like Dave Smith, whenever he brings up the UN or the international genocide experts or self-determination, it's amazing how for a libertarian, to abandon its principles, apparently you just have to bring up Jews. And quickly international law becomes valid. The idea of self-determination, mainly pushed by Woodrow Wilson. I'm sure Dave Smith is a big fan of Woodrow Wilson. It's surprising how quickly people will abandon any, let's say, pretense of principles, because with libertarians it's hard to even call it principles. But Stuart, we're wrapping up, so any last thoughts from you, or anything we didn't bring up, and also where can people find you?
I can be found at my Substack, stuartmargolis.substack.com. I also am on Facebook quite a bit. I do think that this whole exchange was very illuminating. I commend Coleman Hughes for doing this. I think I'm going to follow him more closely. I was quite impressed by him. I'm sure he's not an objectivist, but he seems to have a fairly good grasp on the situation in Israel, and that's always refreshing.
Yeah, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Yeah, perhaps we can send Coleman Atlas Shrugged, maybe get him into the movement. Anyway, I'm Iyar Reichel. I am an associate of the Ayn Rand Center Israel. Please visit aynrand.org.il/about to learn more about the Israeli Ayn Rand Center and what we do. I'm also a leading member of the Victory Now movement. I've written a book called Victory Now, which is about to be out soon. We present the plan for Israel's victory and a moral case for it. The war we are fighting is essentially and first and foremost ideological war, and it's time for people to change their mind a little bit, because currently the leading ideas in the Western world are quite self-destructive. So please visit www.victory.now.
And with that, we'll of course be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the Reality Show. Until then, thank you for joining us, and bye-bye.